The millionaire who married, the hotel heiress that played for his soul. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character, Ethan Ward. Ethan was 35 years old, a man whose name once meant success in the luxury hotel world. He had built an empire before most people his age had even found their purpose. Magazines once called him the golden visionary of Manhattan hospitality, but that was before everything began to collapse. A few wrong partnerships, a betrayal from his own board, and an economic storm that hit harder than he expected. Overnight, his empire started to crumble. The people who had once toasted to his genius now whispered about his downfall. The world that once admired him now seemed to celebrate his pain. He walked through the grand lobby of the Empire Rose Hotel that evening, one of his own creations, but the place no longer felt like his. His employees lowered their eyes in silence. The air was heavy with rumors. Somewhere deep down, Ethan wondered when success had turned into survival. That was when he heard it. A piano, soft, haunting notes echoed through the marble hall, slow, sincere, alive. The sound drifted from the corner near the tall windows where sunlight spilled across the floor. Ethan turned, and for a moment he forgot everything. The losses, the headlines, the fatigue. Sitting by the piano was a young woman in a simple cream dress. Her fingers moved with quiet confidence, her expression calm yet filled with emotion. The melody she played was not loud or grand, but there was something magnetic in it, something pure. When the song ended, she turned toward him with a gentle smile. "Good evening, Mr. Ward." Ethan blinked, slightly caught off guard. "Do I know you?" The young woman shook her head softly. "No, but I have admired your work for years. I studied your early hotel designs in college. You built places that made people feel safe. That is a rare gift." Her words hit deeper than she knew. Safe. That was something Ethan himself had not felt in a very long time. Before he could respond, his assistant called from across the lobby. The meeting with investors was waiting. Ethan gave the girl one last look, a look of gratitude mixed with curiosity before walking away. That night, the meeting ended in yet another disappointment. The deal collapsed. Another partner withdrew. Another headline waited for the morning papers. When the world began to blur from the whiskey in his glass, Ethan found himself returning to the lobby again. Maybe it was habit, or maybe it was the quiet hope that the music would still be there. And it was the same piano, the same girl, the same melody that reached the parts of his soul he thought had long gone silent. He walked closer, his voice low and rough. "Your music, there is something about it. It makes people want to stop and just breathe. It feels warm, peaceful. I wish it could heal everything that is broken inside me." The young woman looked up, her eyes filled with understanding. "Music can calm the heart," she said softly. "But healing, that takes time and sometimes another person willing to listen." He stood there for a long moment, her words echoing inside him. A man who had conquered the world suddenly realized how alone he was. And in that fragile silence between pain, pride, and exhaustion, Ethan Ward said something even he did not fully understand. "Would you be that person? Would you marry me?" The words hung in the air, absurd and raw. The girl stared at him, her fingers still resting on the piano keys. For a moment, time stood still, the man who had everything and lost it, asking the girl whose music had touched his soul for something he had never truly had before: peace. And though she said nothing that night, something in her heart whispered that their story had just begun. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the high windows of the Empire Rose Hotel. The lobby was quiet except for the faint hum of staff preparing for another busy day. Ethan Ward sat alone in the corner, a cup of black coffee cooling in his hand. He had not slept. The memory of his own words from the night before haunted him like an unfinished song. He had asked a stranger to marry him. The thought sounded insane even to him, but somehow it had not felt wrong in that moment. Maybe because her music had felt like the only honest thing in his world lately. Across the lobby, the same soft melody began again, the same piano, the same calm. She was there, Clara Evans. This time, Ethan approached her with a steady voice. About last night, I owe you an apology. I was not myself. Clara turned slightly, her fingers still brushing the keys. You were human, she said gently. Sometimes the weight we carry makes us say things our heart wants before our mind catches up. He almost smiled. Then you are kinder than most. She glanced at him with quiet warmth. And you are lonelier than most. The words hit harder than he expected. For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. The hotel lobby faded behind him. All he saw was her. She was young, perhaps 23 or 24, fresh out of college. There was a certain grace in the way she spoke, gentle but confident, humble yet wise. Tell me something, he asked softly. Why do you play here, in a hotel lobby? Clara smiled. Because people here are always moving, checking in, checking out. They carry stories, heartbreaks, hopes. I like being part of the background of their lives. Sometimes music is the only thing that does not judge them. Ethan looked at her carefully. Do you ever feel like you are meant for something more? Her eyes softened. We all are. But sometimes more does not mean bigger. It just means truer. Her answer lingered in his mind long after she returned to playing. Later that evening, as Ethan prepared for another meeting with potential investors, the doubts began to flood back. His company was bleeding money. The board was restless. The press had already labeled him a fallen star. He knew what they wanted. Stability, image, control. He had none of it. When his assistant mentioned a gala dinner with top clients, Ethan almost refused. But then he remembered Clara's words. Sometimes the weight we carry makes us say things our heart wants before our mind catches up. At the gala, he stood among people who smiled too easily and talked too fast. Every handshake felt rehearsed, every compliment hollow. When someone asked if he was bringing a partner, he paused. For the first time, he realized that the woman whose music had calmed him might be the only real thing left in his life. That night, he returned to the hotel again. Clara was finishing her final song. When she stood, Ethan approached, quieter this time. I meant what I said, he began softly. I was not drunk on whiskey. I was drunk on exhaustion. But what I said came from something real. Clara's expression was calm, but her heart quickened. And what exactly did you mean, mister? Ward? He took a breath. I meant the proposal. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I need something honest in my life again. Something that cannot be bought or negotiated. She studied him for a long moment. And you think a marriage can give you that? He hesitated. No, I think you can. The silence between them felt like the pause between two notes in a song, fragile, uncertain, but filled with possibility. Clara looked down at the piano keys and whispered, I do not know what to say. Oh, then do not say anything now, Ethan replied. Just think about it. Sometimes life only gives us one strange chance to start over. As he walked away, Clara stood there, her fingers tracing the keys as if the answer might be hidden inside the melody itself. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the glass walls, a reflection of two lives about to intertwine in ways neither of them could yet imagine. A week passed, and the rhythm of the Empire Rose Hotel continued, like nothing had changed. Guests checked in and out, staff moved quietly, and the grand piano in the lobby kept playing its soft songs at twilight. But for Ethan Ward, nothing felt the same. Every time he walked past that piano, his eyes searched for her. Sometimes she was there, lost in her music. Other times, only the empty bench remained, and it felt like silence itself had weight. He told himself he was being foolish, that it was just admiration, curiosity, or maybe the simple comfort of seeing someone untouched by greed or ambition. But deep down, he knew it was more. Clara Evans, the girl whose music had calmed his chaos, the one person who had spoken to him without fear or flattery. One evening, after another exhausting meeting with lawyers and accountants, Ethan found her sitting near the window, her hair glinting under the fading sunlight. She smiled when she saw him, a quiet, genuine smile that disarmed him completely. Rough day? She asked gently. They are all rough these days, he replied, his tone carrying both irony and fatigue. But somehow, I keep coming back here. Because it feels like home, she asked. He thought for a moment. No, he said softly. Because it feels honest. She looked at him carefully, sensing the storm behind his calm voice. Mr. Ward? The world can take your company, your reputation, even your comfort, but it cannot take your worth. That is something you decide every morning when you wake up. He leaned against the piano staring at her. You talk like someone who has seen too much for her age. Clara smiled faintly. Maybe music teaches you that pain and beauty often come from the same place. They both fell silent. Outside, rain began to fall against the tall windows, soft and rhythmic, like another instrument joining their quiet conversation. Ethan finally spoke, his voice low and unguarded. Clara, I have lost everything I thought defined me. My company is hanging by a thread. People who once praised me now pretend they never knew me. I do not even know who to trust anymore. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said, then maybe this is the first time in years that you are free. Free from pretending, free from expectation. He gave a tired laugh. Freedom feels a lot like loneliness. She looked at him with compassion. Maybe loneliness is just the space where healing begins. Her words lingered in the air. For a man who had built an empire out of numbers, logic, and control, her voice felt like truth pure and terrifying. After a long silence, Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. Inside was a proposal contract, not for business, but for something entirely different. He placed it gently on the piano. What is that? Clara asked quietly. It is a contract, he said. Not a business one. Not exactly. Her brows furrowed. Ethan, I am not asking for romance or illusion, he continued, his tone steady but vulnerable. I need a partner, someone who can stand beside me as I rebuild what I have lost. Someone who is not after my wealth or my name. I cannot promise happiness, but I can promise honesty. She stared at the papers, stunned. You are serious. He nodded once. Deadly serious. The rain outside grew heavier, echoing against the glass. Clara folded her hands, trying to process what he had said. It was madness, yet there was something profoundly human about it. A man who had everything and lost it all now asking for something real, even if it came in the shape of a contract. After what felt like an eternity, she whispered, this is not how people usually begin. No, he said softly. But maybe it is how broken people find their way back. She exhaled slowly, still staring at him. Let me think about it. He smiled faintly, not expecting more. That is all I ask. Oh. As he turned to leave, the lights of the city glowed behind him, reflecting on the marble floor. Clara watched his silhouette disappear through the glass doors and felt her heart pull in two directions, one toward logic and one toward a man who had just offered her the strangest, most honest beginning of all. 2 weeks later, the morning sun spilled through the glass walls of a quiet law office in downtown Manhattan. The city outside was alive and loud, but inside, everything felt suspended too still, too formal. Papers lay on the table between them, and a pen rested neatly beside them. Ethan Ward sat across from Clara Evans. The same man who once built skyscrapers and luxury hotels now looked strangely human, softer, quieter, stripped of all arrogance. Clara, dressed in a simple beige blouse and modest skirt, sat with her hands folded in her lap. Her expression was calm, but her heart was a storm. This is not a fairy tale, Ethan said softly, breaking the silence. It is a contract. 1 year. We present a stable image, attend public events together, and in return, you will have full financial independence and the freedom to end it whenever you choose. Clara looked down at the papers, then back at him. And after 1 year, he exhaled. After 1 year, if either of us wants to walk away, we do. No questions asked. Her eyes lingered on the words in front of her. Marriage. Legally binding. Emotionally undefined. Why me? She asked finally. Ethan hesitated. Because you are the only person who has not asked me for anything. The room went quiet again. Then, with steady hands, she picked up the pen. All right, she said softly. Let us make it official. The signing took only minutes, but when she placed the pen down, Clara felt the weight of something far greater than paper or ink. It was not love, not yet, but it was a promise of sorts. A promise between two broken souls trying to rebuild something, even if they did not know what it was yet. That afternoon, they stood before a city clerk in a small ceremonial office. There were no flowers, no music, no guests, just two signatures, two witnesses, and the sound of a stamp hitting paper. Congratulations, the clerk said politely. Ethan offered his arm out of courtesy. Clara hesitated, then took it. When their hands touched, he felt a flicker, not passion, but recognition. The feeling of being seen. Outside, the world carried on. Taxis honked, people hurried, and no one noticed that the once famous hotel tycoon had just married a girl whose music had once stopped him in his tracks. Back at the Empire Rose Hotel, the news had already spread among the staff. Whispers followed him down the hallways. She is so young. He must be desperate. Maybe she married him for the money. Clara heard it all but said nothing. Ethan ignored it too, though inside, it stung. Not for himself, but for her. That evening, he found her in the suite that was now theirs. She stood by the window, watching the skyline. "Does it feel strange?" he asked. She turned slightly. "It feels unreal." He nodded. "You can still back out. I would not stop you." She smiled faintly. "I am here because I chose to be. You may not believe in second chances, Mr. Ward, but I do." He studied her face, searching for hidden motives and finding none. "Then maybe we both have something to learn." Days turned into weeks. They began appearing together at charity events, business galas, and photo calls. The cameras loved them, the fallen millionaire and the mysterious young wife. It made headlines. A marriage of redemption. Behind closed doors, their life was polite but distant. They shared meals, exchanged brief conversations, and sometimes sat in silence as the city lights flickered through the windows. It was not romance, but it was peace, the kind of peace Ethan had not felt in years. Some nights, he would hear her playing the piano in the hotel lounge long after midnight. The notes drifted through the corridors like a secret meant only for him. He never interrupted. He would simply listen from afar, letting the music fill the emptiness he could not name. One night, he asked, "Why do you still play?" She answered softly, "Because I do not want to forget who I am. Before the contract, before the cameras, I was just a girl who believed music could heal." He watched her then, realizing that her quiet strength was the very thing holding him together. Their marriage might have been born out of desperation, but in that stillness between the unspoken words and lingering piano notes, something fragile began to grow. It was not love, not yet, but it was the faint beginning of hope, and that was enough to keep both of them from falling apart. For the first time in years, Ethan Ward began to wake up, not thinking about what he had lost, but wondering what he might still find. And though neither of them would admit it out loud, both knew that this contract, this strange, accidental marriage, was slowly becoming something far more real than either had planned. 3 months passed since the day Clara Evans signed her name beside Ethan Ward's. What began as a paper arrangement had settled into something resembling a quiet rhythm. The city still whispered about their union, a millionaire clinging to dignity, a young woman with uncertain intentions, but inside their shared world, life had become almost ordinary. Each morning, Ethan would leave early for meetings, while Clara spent her time at the hotel lounge, helping the music department organize evening performances. Guests had grown used to her presence, calling her the piano girl who became Mrs. Ward. Though the staff's curiosity never faded, Clara never responded to gossip. She only smiled and returned to her work, her calm nature softening even the coldest whispers. Ethan watched her from a distance more often than he admitted. At dinners or charity events, she carried herself with poise that surprised him. She never seemed overwhelmed, never acted out of place. It was as if she had been raised around this world, though he knew nothing about her past beyond what she had chosen to share. One evening, after a long investor dinner, Ethan walked into the suite they now shared. Clara was sitting at the piano again, her fingers drifting over the keys, lost in thought. "That song," he said quietly, "I have heard it before." She looked up, startled. "You remember?" "It was the first one I heard you play in the lobby," he said, "the day everything started." She smiled faintly. "Then I guess this is our song." Her words struck something in him. Our song. It felt dangerous to think that way, but he did not stop himself. He sat across from her, his expression thoughtful. "You never told me about your family," he said. "Do they know about this arrangement?" Clara's hands stilled. The smile faded, replaced by a distant calm. "They know I am married," she said, "but they do not know who to." "Why not?" he asked, genuinely curious. She hesitated. "Because my family has its own history with your industry, Mr. Ward. Complicated history." Hall, he leaned forward. "Meaning?" She shook her head softly. "Meaning some truths are better left quiet, at least for now." Her tone was gentle but firm, and Ethan sensed the invisible wall she had drawn. For a man used to uncovering every detail, her mystery fascinated him even more. Over the following weeks, Ethan's respect for Clara deepened. She handled public attention with grace, avoided gossip, and somehow made him appear steadier in the eyes of the business world. Under her influence, the investors began to return. The empire that had nearly collapsed was slowly finding its footing again. Still, he could not shake the feeling that there was something she was not saying a secret behind those composed eyes. One late evening, he found her alone in the hotel's private garden, the city lights glittering beyond the glass walls. She was on the phone, her voice low, her words measured. "Yes, Father," she said. "I know what I am doing. Please trust me." And the tone of her voice made Ethan pause before stepping closer. When she turned and saw him, she froze for a moment, then smiled quickly, slipping her phone into her bag. "Could not sleep?" she asked, her voice calm but slightly shaky. "I could ask you the same," he replied. "Who were you talking to?" "My father," she said. "He worries, that is all." He nodded slowly, though something inside him stirred an instinct sharpened by years of corporate war. "He must care for you deeply." He does," she said, looking away, "even if he does not always understand my choices." Ethan watched her in silence, wondering what she was truly protecting her father or him. That night he could not sleep. His mind kept replaying her words, her tone, the way her eyes had shifted when he asked about her family. The next morning at breakfast, he found Clara reading a business section headline that mentioned his company's partial recovery. She looked up at him and said quietly, "You are rebuilding, Ethan. That is something to be proud of." He met her gaze. "I could not have done it without you." Her smile was warm but restrained. "Maybe you were just waiting for someone to believe in you again." He almost reached for her hand then, but stopped himself. She excused herself soon after, saying she had errands to run for the hotel. When she left, Ethan picked up the paper she had been reading. On the back page, an article caught his attention, a short business profile about Evans International Hotels, a legacy chain once led by William Evans, now passed to his only heir, who remained unnamed. Ethan's pulse quickened. The name Evans, the same name on her contract. For a long moment, he stared at the page, then folded it carefully. The truth was beginning to whisper to him quietly, dangerously, like a melody he had heard before but never truly understood. Ethan Ward sat in his office, the morning sun barely breaking through the gray Manhattan sky. The city looked calm, but his mind was anything but. The newspaper from the previous day still lay on his desk, folded open to the small article about Evans International Hotels. The words replayed in his head over and over again, William Evans, heir unnamed. He had spent his life building a reputation on instinct, on reading people. That same instinct now whispered something unsettling. Clara Evans, his wife, might not be the woman he thought she was. He told himself he was overreacting, yet every detail began to line up too neatly. Her poise in public, her understanding of the hospitality business, her effortless ability to navigate social circles. It was as if she had been born into this world, not stumbled into it. By noon, curiosity had turned into quiet investigation. Ethan made a single phone call to a trusted associate, asking for a discreet background check. He felt guilty even as he said the words. But the truth, he thought, was better than blind faith. That evening, he returned to the hotel. Clara was in the lounge, playing the piano softly, while a few guests lingered with their drinks. The sound was warm, peaceful, the same melody that had once stopped him in his tracks. For a moment, he wanted to forget everything. But the envelope on his desk at home waited like a shadow. When she finished her song, he approached her, offering a faint smile. "You play like you are telling a secret." Clara laughed lightly. "Maybe I am." He sat beside her on the piano bench. "And if I asked you to tell me what that secret is?" Her fingers hesitated over the keys. Then it would not be a secret anymore. Later that night, when Clara had gone to bed, Ethan opened the envelope. Inside was a simple document, her full background report. And there it was, printed in black and white. Clara Elise Evans, daughter of William Evans, founder and former chairman of Evans International Hotels, the very company that had once competed against Ethan's empire. The truth hit like a punch. His wife, the woman he had trusted with his name, his home, his fragile hope, was the heir to a rival dynasty. Anger and disbelief warred within him. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe she had reasons. Maybe it was coincidence. But another thought followed. What if she had married him not out of kindness, but strategy? What if this entire arrangement had been orchestrated to access his company's secrets? The next morning, a storm broke both outside and within. Rain pounded the city, lightning flashing against glass towers. In the boardroom, chaos erupted. One of Ethan's senior partners burst in with news that confidential plans for a new luxury hotel project had leaked to competitors, specifically Evans International. By the time the meeting ended, rumors had already spread. The press caught wind of the breach, and whispers of corporate espionage filled the industry. Ethan's marriage became an easy target. Headlines appeared within hours. Hotel Heiress infiltrates rival empire, the marriage that shocked Manhattan. For days, television talk shows dissected every detail. Reporters camped outside the Empire Rose Hotel, speculating about betrayal, secrets, and scandal. But like every frenzy, the storm of attention burned bright, then began to fade, leaving behind the silence of doubt, heavier than the noise itself. When Ethan returned home, Clara was waiting. Her face was pale, her hands trembling slightly as she held the same newspaper. "Ethan, this is not true," she said. "I swear to you I had nothing to do with this." He stared at her, the storm reflected in his eyes. "You are the daughter of William Evans. You never told me that." "I wanted you to know me for who I am," she said desperately, "not for my name, not for the company I was born into." "So you thought lying would make it better?" he asked sharply. "I did not lie," she whispered. "I just did not tell you yet." He laughed bitterly. "Do you realize what this looks like, Clara? The leaks, the timing, your last name hidden behind a contract?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Please, Ethan. I came into this marriage because I admired you, because I wanted to learn from you, not destroy you." But his heart had already hardened. "Then explain why my designs are now in the hands of your family's company." "I cannot," she said softly, voice breaking, "but I promise I will fix this." Ethan turned away, unable to look at her. "You already broke it." That night, Clara packed a single suitcase. She left a letter on his desk, the ink slightly smudged from her tears. "I never meant to hurt you. I only wanted to stand beside you, not against you. If love ever means anything to you, please remember that the truth was never a weapon in my hands, only a wound in my heart." When Ethan found the note hours later, the rain had stopped, but the silence felt heavier than the storm. For the first time in years, he realized that success and failure could look exactly the same, both could leave a man utterly alone. Days turned into weeks, but the silence inside the Empire Rose Hotel felt endless. Ethan Ward continued to go through the motions of his work, meeting with lawyers and consultants, attending board meetings, and facing the inevitable questions from the press. The scandal had taken its toll. Investors hesitated. His reputation, once golden, now carried the stain of betrayal. Yet the emptiness he felt was not because of the business. It was because of her. Every time he entered the hotel lobby, the piano stood there in silence, untouched, uncovered, and waiting. The memory of Clara's music haunted him more than the sound itself ever did. He had grown used to hearing her melodies drift through the corridors late at night. Now, the absence of those notes felt like the heartbeat of the hotel had stopped. One night, long after midnight, Ethan sat in the same corner where he had first heard her play. Rain streaked down the glass windows, the same way it had on the night she left. In front of him, the piano seemed to stare back, accusing and patient all at once. He replayed everything in his mind: the first meeting, the quiet dinners, her gentle smile, her refusal to defend herself when the truth came out. He had demanded honesty, but given her no space to explain. And now, the question that tortured him most was not why did she lie, but what if she was telling the truth? The next morning, Ethan received a message from his lawyer. Evans International has dropped the competing project. Their CEO claims the leaked designs did not come from your company. He froze. The CEO, William Evans, had spoken publicly, denying any wrongdoing and calling the rumors malicious fabrications. More importantly, he had said one thing that pierced straight through Ethan's heart. "My daughter has always acted with integrity. Her actions were her own, guided by her own beliefs, not by our company." Daughter. There it was again, undeniable. Clara Evans, the woman who had stood by him in his darkest months, had carried a truth that might have saved them both, if only he had trusted her long enough to listen. That afternoon, Ethan found himself driving through the city aimlessly, past streets he barely recognized. He had not realized until that moment how much of his life had revolved around power, control, and the illusion of certainty. Clara had been the one thing he did not try to control, and yet He had destroyed her anyway. When he finally returned to the hotel, the front desk manager handed him a small envelope. "This came for you, sir," delivered by hand. Ethan opened it slowly. Inside was a short note written in familiar handwriting. "Ethan, I am leaving New York for a while. The truth will clear itself when it is ready, not when we demand it. I hope one day, when the noise fades, you will remember not the rumors, but the music. Clara." He folded the paper carefully, his hands trembling. The words were simple, but they felt like a confession and a farewell all at once. Later that night, Ethan walked to the lounge again. He sat at the piano, the same one she had played so many times. The staff watched from a distance as he pressed a single key. The sound was soft, hesitant. He was not a musician, but he understood now what she meant when she said music could heal. As the note lingered in the air, Ethan whispered to no one in particular, "I should have listened." The following week, the newspapers shifted their attention to another scandal. The noise around his name began to fade. Investors slowly returned, and the board stopped questioning his leadership. Yet in the quiet that followed, regret filled every space the headlines once occupied. In private, Ethan realized the cruel irony. The woman he had married out of desperation had been the only one who ever believed in him for who he really was. Somewhere far away, Clara Evans read the same newspapers and saw his photograph again. He looked composed, professional, untouchable, the man the world had always known. But she also saw something no one else did. Behind his calm eyes was a sadness only she could recognize. And though miles now separated them, both Ethan and Clara carried the same silent truth that love, once broken by pride, was harder to rebuild than any empire. It had been nearly 2 months since Clara Evans had left New York. Ethan Ward had not seen her, but traces of her presence remained everywhere, in the quiet of the suite, in the faint scent of her perfume, and in the piano that no one had dared to touch. He told himself he had moved on, that his focus was on rebuilding the company, but every late night in the empty office reminded him otherwise. Despite his efforts, the storm surrounding the leaked project refused to die completely. Reporters kept circling. Investors hesitated to commit to the next phase of expansion. A hearing with the Business Commission was scheduled to determine whether Ethan's company had violated trade ethics. It was not just about money anymore. It was about reputation, something a man could lose only once. Then, on a cold Friday morning, something unexpected happened. Ethan arrived at the commission hall to find a crowd of journalists gathered outside. As he walked in, the noise rose into a wave of camera flashes. But the sight that froze him was not the chaos, it was her. Clara stood at the front of the room, speaking calmly to the panel. She looked different, confident, composed, and radiant in a soft gray suit. The last time he had seen her, she had looked broken. Now, she looked unshakable. When she noticed Ethan enter, her eyes met his for a brief second before she turned back to the microphone. "Members of the board," Clara said, her voice clear, "I am here to clarify that Ethan Ward had no involvement in the leak of his company's hotel designs. The documents in question were accessed through a private account belonging to an independent contractor, someone once employed by Evans International. When I learned of the breach, I resigned from my father's board to prevent a conflict of interest. I stand here today not as an heiress, but as a witness." Oh, a low murmur spread across the room. Ethan's pulse quickened. She had walked into the fire for him, risking not only her name but her family's empire. The chairman asked, "Miss Evans, are you aware that by making this statement, you are publicly accepting responsibility for actions that could damage your family's reputation?" Clara nodded. "I am aware, but truth matters more than legacy. And sometimes, doing what is right costs more than we expect." End of. Her voice trembled slightly at the end, but her eyes remained steady. The hearing lasted less than an hour. When it ended, the panel announced that Ethan's company was cleared of all wrongdoing. The media storm shifted instantly, the headlines changing from suspicion to redemption. Hotel Heiress clears millionaire of scandal. When the crowd finally dispersed, Ethan found Clara standing alone by the marble staircase. For a moment, neither spoke. The weight of unspoken months hung between them. "You should not have done that," he said quietly. "You just risked everything." She smiled faintly. "It was already mine to risk. You once said you wanted honesty more than anything. This is it." Ethan's voice softened. "Why, Clara? After everything I said to you, everything I accused you of. Because I know what it feels like to lose faith in someone," she said. "I did not want you to live with that pain forever." And he stepped closer, his expression torn between gratitude and guilt. I do not deserve this. She shook her head gently. It was never about deserving. It was about doing what was right. As she turned to leave, Ethan reached out, his hand brushing her arm. Clara, he said, his voice breaking slightly. What happens now? She paused, looking up at him through glassy eyes. Now you rebuild the right way. And maybe one day, when the noise is gone and the world stops watching, we will find out if what we had was just a contract or something real. Then she walked away, her heels echoing softly against the marble floor. Ethan watched until she disappeared into the crowd of cameras, her courage outshining every flash of light around her. That night, as he stood alone in his office, the city lights below seemed to flicker in rhythm with the piano melody he still remembered. For the first time in years, he did not feel anger or guilt or pride, only gratitude. She had given up her world to save his, and in doing so, she had reminded him what love really was. Not a promise, not a contract, but a quiet act of sacrifice that spoke louder than words. Months passed, and New York moved on from the scandal that had once filled every headline. The noise of accusation and doubt had faded, replaced by quiet admiration for Ethan Ward's comeback. Under his leadership, the Ward Group began to thrive again, not through power plays or fast deals, but through the slow rebuilding of trust. Yet success did not bring peace. Every victory meeting, every new contract signed, carried the same silent ache. The one person who had saved him was no longer by his side. Clara Evans had kept her promise. She disappeared from the public eye after clearing his name. Still, Ethan often found himself glancing toward the hotel lounge, half expecting to see her sitting at the piano, her fingers tracing the keys, the sound of her music filling the space where his words had failed. But the piano remained untouched, a relic of a chapter that had ended too soon. One autumn afternoon, Ethan was invited to speak at a charity gala hosted at a historic concert hall downtown. It was a familiar type of event, investors, philanthropists, endless polite smiles, but as he entered the hall, something unexpected caught his attention. A grand piano stood at the center of the stage. When the lights dimmed and the first notes began to play, Ethan froze. The melody was unmistakable, soft, slow, and hauntingly familiar. The same song that had filled the hotel lobby on the day he first met her. And then, she appeared. Clara Evans walked onto the stage in a simple navy gown. No jewelry, no entourage, only calm grace. The crowd erupted in applause, unaware of the story they shared. But Ethan stood still, every heartbeat echoing with memory. Her eyes found him in the audience for a single second, enough to say everything that had remained unsaid. Then she began to play. The music grew deeper with every note, gentle at first, then powerful, like forgiveness taking form. It was not just a performance. It was a confession in sound. Each chord carried pieces of their past. The pain, the misunderstanding, the love that never had a proper ending. When the final note faded, the audience rose to their feet, applauding. Clara bowed gracefully, but her eyes stayed on him. After the event, Ethan found her backstage. She was standing by the piano, touching its surface as if saying goodbye again. You still play our song, he said softly. She turned, smiling faintly. I never stopped. I just needed time to remember why it mattered. He took a step closer. And did you? She nodded. It mattered because it was real, even when everything else was not. There was silence between them, but it felt different this time. No bitterness, no guilt, only understanding. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, the simple gold band from their contract marriage, the one she had left behind when she walked away. He held it between them. I do not know what we were then, he said quietly, but I know what I want us to be now. No contracts, no conditions, just truth. Clara looked at the ring, then back at him. Her voice was barely a whisper. Do you think love can really start over? He smiled gently. I think love never really ends. It just waits for us to be ready. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Clara placed her hand over his, closing his fingers around the ring. Then maybe it is time, she said. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the glass windows. The world carried on, but for Ethan and Clara, time felt suspended, like the final lingering note of a song that had found its ending at last. As they walked out together, the piano behind them caught a sliver of light from the chandelier above. Its reflection glowed softly across the stage, a quiet symbol of two hearts once broken, now reborn through forgiveness, faith, and the courage to love again. Because sometimes second chances are not given. They are earned through the music we never stop hearing and the people we never stop loving. If you believe in second chances, share this story and subscribe for more Millionaire Heart Stories, where every broken heart finds its way home.